Very good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. It's Friday, so it's your favorite show, Friday Drinks, and we're missing one musketeer, Rufaro. Unfortunately, last week it was Dziya who had the colds, and he saw it fit to pass it down the line. So the next one down was myself, but that was just for a day or two. I quickly recovered, primarily because my immune system is stronger than Dziya's and Rufaro. Rufaro is still down. A week later, the guy is suffering. It's miserable just watching him, in bed.
Yeah,
what do you have to say for yourself?
I'll exercise my right to deny the allegations, and I just say
you were the super spreader.
No, I wasn't. You guys are just weak. I don't know where you got the flu from.
We got it from you. You were the super spreader.
Yeah, but generally Rufaro is quite resistant to these colds. So look,
until last week.
Yeah. So we are sending love to you, Shumba. I know that you have got some concoction of yours that you have prepared. It's mostly whiskey. Yeah. So it must be a terrible one. The one that couldn't be cleared by whiskey was one of his strong stuff that he drinks. Yeah. So yeah, we miss you. We miss you. But let the show continue.
Get well soon, Shumba. And while you're away, we will desecrate your bar, and we will have a concoction. Is that what you're having as well?
I'm having a concoction.
Yeah, because that's the only way we can survive.
So it's a concoction bar today.
Yeah, exactly. And to those who are curious and who want to know what exactly is in our concoction, so it's ginger, lemon, and honey. Essentially, that's it, and it certainly helps. Clears the airways and it clears the nasal tunnel. Yeah. And it makes one better, so much better. And I'm also quite surprised that it's still wintry and we're in mid-August. What's actually happening with our weather?
It's surprising. I was actually expecting that by this time we'll be starting to enjoy some warm temperatures, but yeah, each day that's coming, the temperatures are really getting quite chilly. You'd think that maybe we are in the middle of July in some cases. So look, it's terrible for it's really, winter is a good sort of platform for some colds and flus to be spreading. And that's why we still have the likes of Shumbas down with a cold in what's supposed to be a warm August.
Yeah, ideally it should be. Yeah. The other thing is ZESA. We've had problems with ZESA, and hence the delay in us shooting. I mean, I was actually quite keen on us starting at 3 p.m. without Shumba, because I thought that he is the one who jinxed our starting time, but it turns out ZESA, had other thoughts.
Yeah, and we our team obviously sent out an apology to our viewers, but I was so adamant that it's not us who should apologize. It has to be ZESA. We didn't cause it didn't create any chaos. But look, these are things that you are to expect operating in Zimbabwe, and then it calls into question all discussions around ease of doing business, the attractiveness of the country as an investment destination. Because I mean, if you can't get a very basic thing as power, surely what kind of pitch can you make to an investor? Come to Zimbabwe, but you don't have power.
Well, actually, that's a good way of starting, because somebody has just done a study. Veritas International has done a study and says Zimbabwe needs $100 billion to end the electricity wars. Zimbabwe will need to invest up to $10 billion to raise power production to meet domestic demand. A new study by Veritas has revealed, warning that the poor power production right across is essentially hamstrung by our electricity production. We just haven't kept up with the demand. And if you look at gold, if you look at agriculture, and those are, manufacturing, those are heavy users of electricity. And unfortunately, the numbers are just not coming through. And $10 billion is a lot. I mean, when you think about it in the grand scheme of things, when you look at the FDI that we've had over the last decade or 2 decades, is on a yearly basis about $500 million. So we haven't really even got, over the last decade, we haven't received $10 billion, let alone $10 billion in just the electricity sector. So does it mean that the electricity wars are with us forever? What does this actually mean?
Yeah, it's just a reflection of what's happening throughout the economy. When you look at the power issue, is one big issue is really around the pricing of the product. We always have a tendency of price controls. So power is probably priced at levels that are sub, import.
But now we're correctly priced. I mean, farmers are paying upwards of 20 cents a kilowatt hour, and that's higher than the SADC average. It's one of the highest in the world.
But is it really across the board? Because there's one positive thing that I thought was beginning to come up, which is opening up the sector, sort of deregulating it by allowing independent power producers to come on board. And I think what we then tended to see is most of them have really failed to get to production level. Okay, there's a capital raising issue, but there's also a pricing issue where, if the main off-taker is ZETDC, ZESA by another name, and you are charging a price which they are only happy to pay in local currency, effectively you're actually getting a rate that is subpar. Yeah. And the whole inconsistency around the pricing has been a problem. And we've run an experiment with fuel, which has worked in terms of maybe ensuring that we have consistent supply. And it's really around the...
So you're literally arguing for dollarization?
Yes. If we can fix out,
we still had electricity problems during dollarized era.
Yeah, but
it's not like the wars go away purely because we're dollarized.
So it's not a
problem. We've had an electricity problem for the last 25 years.
So dollarizing the electricity side is not a solution in itself, but it's one good positive step. But obviously, then you need to support it with, just ensuring that when you got, the pricing is good, and there are there's consistency in terms of the policy environment to, private players, because it must be an attractive business proposition for some entrepreneur out there, whether it's to put another, hydro or thermal, or even renewable, if the pricing is good and you are getting paid in the right currency, right? It's going to be, if we don't solve for all these problems that we have allowed to happen over the years, then we will continue having power problems. And, at individual levels, we must say corporates and individuals that have really alleviated the problem in a way, because they are installing small power stations at their specific, whether it's homesteads or their premises, to a point that maybe the demand on the national grid should be much lower than maybe what the population in the industry would really require. But even with that, we just don't have.
But what if we just make ZESA work?
How do you make ZESA work?
Well, for example, just consistency supply of electricity. If you look at the output numbers, they vary. At some point we can get up to 2,000 megawatts an hour, and then it comes down to 700. It's just not consistent. How do we get them to be consistent? Whatever the number is, if it's 700, if it's 800, we need them to be consistent. That's number one. How do we get them to ensure that our industry is fired up, so that the farmers during winter, they get the electricity, tobacco season, they get the electricity, your mining companies, they get the electricity? Because if there is consistency, I kid you not, then the mining companies can actually increase production. And as far as the independent power producers are concerned, I don't know what's. I suppose it's uncertainty in the market, because if you look at it, I think how much have we produced as independent? Still less than 100, right?
Yeah, it is. It is.
So it's not significant at all.
I think probably the bigger players are probably doing 20 megawatts.
Yeah, megawatts. 20. And then everyone else. So it's even less than 50.
Exactly. Everyone else is on maybe 5 or 1, and but I don't know if things have changed, but the few times that I've really done some interactions, it was really around the issue of the pricing, also the issue of the currency.
No, I think the pricing, currency. Maybe what could be the issue is long-term financing. That these are the sort of projects that require long-term financing, and unfortunately, because of the uncertainty in the market, that we just can't invite that long-term financing in Zimbabwe.
It's interesting that you are raising that issue, because I think it's one issue that was sort of flagged, I think, by the Minister of Finance or someone from the ministry, saying that the new economic blueprint, NDS2, for it to really succeed, it has to be powered by external capital. So its success actually hinges on our ability to attract external capital. And then you ask the question, how far are we from being able to do that?
I think that there's something that is not speaking to our economy, which unfortunately, because we are in business and we're market players, we want things to work. But unfortunately, there's the elephant in the room, that if things were to work, then a lot of people there'll be lots of gnashing of teeth, because the extractive industry, the rent seekers, will not make money. So I think that there's a perverse incentive.
They'll find some things to do in other thriving sectors.
Would they?
But I think
if things were stable, if government was working, would these individuals, would they be making money? And unfortunately, these are individuals with now power. They're extremely powerful. So they're incentivized to ensure that things don't work. So let's take, for example, ZESA not working, right? This is debilitating and affects almost everyone in our society, because everybody who's in manufacturing, who's in business, the idea of now using solar or using expensive diesel and generators is just, it just doesn't work. But you have to agree that there's a small coterie of individuals who are making money hand over fist because of that particular crisis.
Yeah, so for the policymakers, obviously, you need to craft policy for the good.
But are you incentivized to make good policy?
And I know how difficult it may be to try and, sideline some of these rent seekers. But I actually believe that if we start doing things like, for example, we solve the power issues, whoever probably was really earning their living from the powers will certainly have to find some other way of making money.
Is the policymaker incentivized to make the right decisions?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. But I would think that maybe having a crisis that continues like as it is right now with the ZESA issue, it's actually not in the best interest of the politicians. You are in the business of acquiring and retaining power.
It's got nothing to do with voting.
I think it's it has to have something to do with voting.
And the politician is also not necessarily the policymaker. It's the bureaucrat.
Yes.
He's a bureaucrat who's earning $250 incentivized to ensure that actually ZESA works.
So when you look at it that way, then
that GMB works.
Then that becomes a problem, because then that becomes more like a target for them. They are making their money from that. But I think at the end of the day, the buck stops with the politician. They are the leaders.
Okay, so let's go to the politician. Yeah. Is the politician incentivized to ensure that we have a stable environment? Is the politician incentivized to make policy work, make government work?
I think they should be.
Give me an example. Give me an example where you say, you know what, I think the policymaker is incentivized and he will ensure that it actually works. No, because his pockets will bulge if this thing is working. Because what we turn to see is that the more problems we have, the politician is buying bigger cars, more luxurious cars. So there's a disconnect as far as I'm concerned. When I look at it, it feels and it seems like the politician is doing very well.
In this environment.
So if you look at the senior politician, the guy who's running ZESA, if you look at the senior politicians who are in charge of ZESA, they're doing phenomenally well, and they're sleeping well at night. Well, you're just, basing it on the cars that they drive. And
I think I would say, Mukanya, we are generally short-sighted. Mm-hmm. We have got this short-termism that I don't know how to exercise it as a society, because we are just looking at what's good for me, like now. But I think, there's an incentive in trying to create an economic environment that creates value sustainably on a long-term basis. And, we need to start thinking intergenerational as a society. That, just ask yourself, is it the kind of society that you want to hand over to the next generation? What kind of legacy would you want to leave to the next generation? And I think there's, even at a personal level, there's a lot of value that can be created if you start doing things right. So, just sort out the ZESA issue, get more investment into the country, and you are collecting more taxes. If they start buying bigger cars or doing all this fancy stuff from a bigger base, really, I think no one will really care that much. So it becomes a problem when whatever you're trying to do, it's actually coming at the expense of the entire.
I'm just trying to look at causation.
Look, it's really obviously on the ground. Because of that short-termism, there's this thinking that when I try to do something right for society, it's coming at my expense. And unfortunately, we have created such that culture has become deep-seated to a point that it has become normal. There was a time when it used to be, people were still corrupt, but it wasn't the norm. But right now,
we had a minister that actually killed himself because he was being accused of corruption. I think that really sets the stage of what kind of society we were.
Yes,
we had some sort of.
But right now we have got corrupt individuals being celebrated as So I think that's the biggest problem.
But I like what we're doing, because we are actually saying that the problems that we have at ZESA, at these national institutions, has to do with corruption, because there's a big incentive for people to actually be corrupt, because their pockets will bulge, and they don't care about what actually happens as far as service delivery is concerned. But since I have you on the show and we don't have Shumba, it means that we can actually go down a particular rabbit hole. And I want you to maybe help us. Let's suppose you were a Sabuku, right? In
my village.
In your village.
Or even Sadunu.
Or Sadunu.
Like George.
Yes. Walk us through what leadership would look like. How would you go about your daily business and, a management of the little village? Because a village is what, about 30 households?
I suppose, yeah.
Yeah. So and Sabuku is in charge of those 30 villages, families. Mm-hmm. And if we assume that you guys breed like rabbits, we assume that each household has got about 10 individuals. So that's about 300 people. So you're in charge of 300 people, which by any measure, if you look at business, that's a lot of people, 300 people. And these people are supposed to go to school, they're supposed to produce, they're supposed to live their lives. When they die, they're supposed to bury. Whenever they have a contestation, they come to you and you have to rule. You have to be the magistrate, the judge, and you have to. Could you give us an idea of what it's like at a micro level? What would a good Sabuku look like?
So I guess if you look at it maybe from the traditional context, where leadership is really within certain families, it's really not different from maybe even a small businesses that is owned by a specific individual. So it means everyone within that village.
It's like a family business.
Yeah. Okay. Everyone within that village pretty much reports to this family, and this family is not accountable in any way. They've got sort of unrestricted power to run things the way they want, to a point that even if they make mistakes, you are not questioning them. And it's almost known that power is going to move from the father maybe to the oldest son, and so on and so forth. So, that society doesn't have incentives to really perform, because there are no consequences for poor performance, I mean, like theoretically. And for that really to work, it really depends on the maybe not the values, but an individual leader at that point in time. It's not too different from maybe what you see in the Middle East, countries that are run by families. For example, in United Arab Emirates, right? There's a specific family that runs Dubai, that runs Abu Dhabi, and so on and so forth. They pretty much run them the way they want. There's no constitution that says at some point leadership can be changed. The success of individual countries or emirates is really dependent on a specific leader. So that is in terms of what we are seeing, and maybe the traditional.
Maybe let's.
Yeah. What I think is best going forward, I think if a community leader has to run.
Let's start with right now at Sabuku level and at village level. What differentiates a good, well-run village from a badly run village? So if you were to go, if we say Chipinge or your surroundings, would you say that your particular village is well-run, better than the next village?
I don't know, but I think
what sort of matrix? Yeah, what sort of matrix can we use?
I think what you need to
judge whether a village is better than the next.
So you want to see if there is development in the village. Developing
and what are the clues? What are the signals?
Yes.
Well, how do we judge that this is a better developed village?
We want to see. I think more. Even small entrepreneurs are emerging within that specific community, selling whatever that they can sell freely, being able to carry their economic activity, whatever that they do, freely without interference.
I think you're being economic with the truth. let's be, because there's a point I want to make. Okay, so let me attack my.
It can be just by imposition. It can be.
I want to say that first. It's in Zimbabwe. Would you not say that Mutoko which is a desolate place,
Okay.
that they tend to run their villages better than Gutu, which is equally desolate, but nothing seems to be happening in Gutu.
Okay.
Whereas in Mutoko, you can see how they are innovative, they are doing something for their local communities.
In terms of what?
Schemes.
Okay.
Well, economic output, just purely on economic output, that these are two desolate places, but one place seems to be doing better than the other. That's number one. Number two, even in terms of people who are going back to the rural areas, if you see, I think it was again in Mutoko, you saw the houses that they were developing in Mutoko. Everywhere around Zimbabwe, we didn't see those sort of houses in the rural areas. And these people were putting in solar, they were putting in boreholes. So you could say, oh, these people, they have, it's not just national pride in their villages, but they're doing something as far as economic activity is concerned. And in terms of the schools that they're getting by. And to me, if I were to reflect on it, it means that the Sabuku, first of all, is very progressive. They are accepting, let the businesses come in. If somebody wants to set up an irrigation scheme or do whatever, it's somebody who is very open-minded and allows these people to start businesses and to go ahead and empower the locals. You wouldn't find the same in Gutu, for example.
Okay, maybe you can walk us through what do you think is a problem with your village.
I think it's a mentality problem, and I'm not. Maybe let's use Filabusi and not Gutu.
Maybe you should
I'll get in trouble. But
you should stick to Gutu because
okay. So at least I have some sort of reference point. So the thing is, if you get to Gutu, the most development that you've seen at Mpandawana is, okay, I'm not gonna say this, but it's
beer halls.
It's a beer hall and it's a mortuary. Like society sat down and said, you know what? I think the most important thing here that we need to make sure that it's let's build a mortuary, and it's the most beautiful mortuary you've ever come across. But to me, it already tells me what sort of mindset we're talking about. And then the second thing is, if someone goes and says, I want to do something in my local village, because I've come from the local village, there's lots of friction, people don't get along, whereas if we were to look at Mutoko, and even when people don't get along, they seem to have a way in which they resolve their issues amongst themselves as brothers, which I think is not the same. And please, we are taking great liberties here. But the point I'm trying to make is, at a localized level, if Sabuku cannot get along with his people, and these are 30 families, if he cannot ensure that there is cohesion with his own people at a local level, then it's going to be very difficult at a national level. Because where are you learning this? If you come from a home where brother fights brother at a very localized level, and you don't have somebody who mediates and says, oh, but you guys, why are you fighting? Do you realize that you're of the same, your interests are actually aligned? What is the issue? We all need to play a part. We need to play a role. How do we resolve it? If we can't resolve these issues at a local level, I think it'll be very difficult for us to resolve this at a national level. I'm going somewhere with this.
Yeah, no,
perhaps what we need to do is we need to step back and look at ourselves at a village level. Let's look at our own villages. It's got nothing to do with politics, but it has everything to do with what's the Sabuku, a good Sabuku. What is a good Sabuku doing?
Well, so look, I think you are onto something. I don't know if it really boils down to the Sabuku specifically. Maybe to the extent that whether he allows or he works with other people within the community as in their leadership, because I mean it's probably someone who thinks they are able to do everything in their own law, so they're a dictator even in that small little village. It also, I mean, the idea of maybe even having small village that allows inbound investment or inbound assistance. I think it's progressive. Some of the places that you're mentioning, they probably are benefiting, or they benefited from investment from, say, NGOs. Right, so
but NGOs are right across. They're in Gerera, they're in Murewa. Why is it NGOs tend to do better in Murewa than they are doing in Gerera? What's wrong with Gerera?
So they're NGOs, but also there are also natural attributes that each particular country, each particular village has. So there are certain things that you can't possibly do in Gerera that you can do in Murewa. But I think the biggest game changer is education. So when you have got most of...
But the people in Mutoko and Murewa are less educated than the people in Gutu. I'm gonna get into trouble.
So there's education, but there's also that desire for them to be able to go back, because it's not everyone. So probably when you look at the people from Gutu, they're thriving. You are thriving here in Harare, right? So when you look at your economy is you're definitely not a middle income economy. You are up there as an economy at a personal level, right? But you are free to make decisions whether you want to invest in one place or another. The place has to give you something.
But I'm not in leadership in Gutu. Whereas maybe, because you do have a point. You do have a point that in Murewa they allow a meritocracy in terms of allowing those that have done well in the cities to come back and be part of their leadership and be innovative, that their ideas are actually welcome. Whereas elsewhere in Gerera, it's very difficult for you to do so. That the Sabuku will go to ends to ensure that you actually don't invest in the area.
But also proximity to the big city. So when you...
But then, again, that's a very good point. Yeah. But we can argue that Murewa is more developed than Ngezi, Mondoro Ngezi.
Okay.
And yet, Murewa Mtoko is more desolate than Ngezi. What's wrong with the people in Ngezi?
Well,
with the Sabuku, because I'm saying that's our first. So it's not that I'm attacking Sabukus, but I'm saying that that's our first unit of leadership in our society. And if we have a problem,
you have to get it right at that level.
We have to get it right at the village level.
You don't expect you to start doing it at the national level.
Exactly.
When you are. So I get you that maybe is the thinking. So even some of the bad decisions that we make at national level, they are really a carryover or a reflection of how we have failed to sort of graduate even from that village. Even at the village level, where probably someone would look at a person up there and say, how do they got there?
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know.
But how come they think like that?
Yes.
But if you go back, that's how they thought when they were at village level.
But I'm sure there are ways of us, changing that mindset.
Well, let's get into it. Yeah. How do we change that? Because we want to solve a national problem, and I think we've correctly identified, and we sort of agree that at some level it starts at the village level. That there's something wrong, there's something problematic at the village level. Okay, so what's the cure? What do we need to do? Let's start at village level.
So, from the discussion so far, it's clear that maybe villages that are open-minded, where you've got an open-minded leader, tend to do well, So open-minded in the sense that they accept different views or innovations or insights that are different, to a point that if you can't get it from the sons of the soil, you can even invite others from a different village. And I would think, it's not based on any study, but I would think places like Mureo that you're talking about, they are probably more receptive even to outsiders coming.
That's a very good point, because I think certain societies, so you're saying that certain clusters and societies that are open-minded as far as ideas are concerned, that leadership has to be open to ideas, but also open to other people, migration from externals who have got better ideas or have got money, and you're accepted as the sons of that particular village or society. Okay, that's a very good one. What else?
So there's that aspect of accepting the externals, but also even I don't know whether there's a way of equipping a sense of value or a sense of belonging even to your own sons and daughters. Like they feel like, okay, we want to go back home. And look, I'm actually surprised that you gave the example of Gutu, but because I've generally associated the people going the Mashingo route as being very proud of their homes, so they're always going there on Heroes, on whether it's Independence or Easter or whatever. And I think when you are frequenting your village, you're most likely to invest there. I think you see that even to a certain point with some people in diaspora. I would think that maybe someone who comes to Zim quite often is most likely to feel pressured to get whether to build a home, because you can't be coming and be staying at your relatives every time that you are here, as opposed to someone that have maybe elected to be.
That's actually even an interesting one, and let's get into it, because you've chosen to go into it. Again, using the analogy of the villages and being proud of the villages. But when you look at the diasporans, why is it the diasporans in America, in the UK, are so attached to Zimbabwe, or have that proclivity or affinity to Zimbabwe than the diasporans in South Africa? I mean, it amazes me that you can come across somebody who lives in South Africa legally, and their papers are in order, but the last time they were in Zimbabwe was a decade or 2 decades ago. Like they just don't associate themselves with Zimbabwe anymore, and they haven't done anything at all as far as Zimbabwe is concerned, in terms of developing even an emotional attachment, a home or something. And yet the diasporans in the UK find it very easy. They will sacrifice everything. Is it because, distance makes the heart fonder, or what?
Yeah, so there's that. I was going to then ask a follow-up question around, so these diasporas say in South Africa, what economic level would they be?
No, we're talking about people in our same economic class. That
So these are people of means.
Yes,
who, if they want, they can do something.
Oh yeah, they could definitely do something. Yeah. But their attachment to Zimbabwe is far less.
Maybe they have assimilated into the South African society. It's probably easier to assimilate into the South African economy because of our society, because of similarities, right? Whether it's a language, let's say you speak some of the Bantu languages, whether it's Ndebele or is I don't know whether it's Venda, some languages that you can easily just you can easily communicate and become part of the society there. I think there's that part, but also because it's closer to Zimbabwe, you are in more like in constant touch and comms with your folks. So you might choose to say, I'm not coming there, but it doesn't mean that maybe your people aren't coming.
But then if it's communication, you're still doing the same.
No, even actual visits.
I thought
because it's cheaper and easier to go to SA than to go to UK or US.
But still, they don't.
I mean, parents, siblings.
If you live in this diaspora, when was the last time you actually came home to Zimbabwe? Because
when was the last time you got visitors from home?
Okay, that's a very good one.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yes. Okay, so now I get your point.
Yes.
So you're saying that if you live in South Africa, it's more likely that you've had Zimbabweans coming to
you. So Mama Chimbo, we are here for holiday.
Okay, so you're very familiar.
Exactly. You are not really
I think that's
missing out.
Good point. That's a very good point. But what we're trying to address is from a leadership perspective, that the way Zimbabwean leadership or Zimbabweans, where we have failed as leadership is perhaps this idea of what we do in our little villages, that once we move to the city, do we still have proclivities and affinities to the village? And I was running with your argument that the closer the proclivities and affinities, the better the development is. Because what you're doing is there's a cross-pollination of ideas. Because you come in the city, you learn something, you hear what others are doing, and then you go back and you say, you know what, okay, I'm no longer there, but why don't we do things this way? And if you've got an open leader, then they're more likely to accept those ideas. But I wanted now to transpose that to people in the diasporans. That why is it people in the diasporans don't have that emotional proclivity to then say, okay, if I know I'm sending just money and it's okay, we all send money back to Gutu, but how do we get ourselves onto an emotional investment in Gutu? Where we say, which is quite different from Murewa. We saw how guys were building big houses in Murewa, that they have that emotional affinity. Because once you have the emotional affinity and you build a house, then you have the settler mentality. I think we've said this with the white settlers that came in, that the white settlers that came in and actually settled were far different to the settlers that were just administrators, that they just looked at Nigeria as a colonial outpost, and those who saw South Africa or Zimbabwe as a place that they could settle. Then there's an emotional investment to actually making it succeed. And I thought, let's run with the thread that the people in Murewa, for whatever reason, have that emotional affinity for their land. Where is that coming from? I find that people in the UK, in the US, have that also emotional affinity to Zimbabwe. And even on X, you find that they're the most, very robust debate is always happening, whether in the UK or in the US. And the Zimbabweans who are in South Africa, in our strata, they seem to think, oh, well, whatever happens, they seem to behave like those from Gutu.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
I don't know, but I think maybe it's also a function of the societies that they are living in. One area that I really felt that maybe, okay, I haven't traveled a lot, but one area that I felt like maybe you could easily feel out of place was the US, because you could see even the way.
So you're constantly reminded.
Yes, you could see even the
That's
way.
a good point.
You could see even the way Americans of African heritage or origin, you could feel that they don't belong
in America.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was staying at this hotel.
So you're continuously reminded.
Yeah, constantly reminded
that you're a foreigner.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you about there were this $1 a day buses that were there. So I spoke to someone at the the receptionist at the hotel that I was staying in, and then she's like, I don't know, but if you want, ask that lady. They were workmates. She happened to be black, and what I quickly picked up is there are certain services that are only, you'd find mostly black, even if the Americans they're associated with black people there.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. And I picked quite a few other things, like one really
that's a very good point.
Yeah, was so I like in a typical restaurant or like a diner, I ate my food, I finished, and then I just walk out to go back to my room. And then some chap actually called me and said, "Oh, brother, you should put it in the trash can." Like, what? Why should I do that? I'm a client here, I've paid, and I've been staying there in the hotel for some time. It turns out that when I then, because I'd spent almost like 7 days there, and I started interacting with the people. The guys who were cleaning, they were conditioned to accept that maybe a white person can just eat and leave their stuff. But a fellow black person, when they do that, because it's the black person who's to have to clean, the least that you can do is take your trash, put it in the trash can.
Help your fellow
exactly.
brother. Okay.
So probably if you go into South Africa, it's different. I mean, like the few times that you travel to South Africa, whether you're going to the butcher's shop or whatever, and like you are Zimbos, you actually feel like you're
still at home.
You're still at home. You're part of the elite. You don't suffer even
That's a very good point.
The same racial prejudice that probably black South Africans are suffering there. So you feel like you are at home, you don't have to do more. Yeah, it's but don't do a crebas more, and the flight to Joburg is like what, 250, 300, and but US visas, you might want to sponsor yourself.
So you're saying that South Africa, US diasporian quickly realizes that they're in a foreign land and it's hostile.
Exactly.
So their affinity towards Zimbabwe becomes more. The emotional appeal becomes more.
Yeah, they start requesting for these funny things. To me, fushwa, pay this and that. I think they never,
which is true,
child when they used to be here.
Yeah, which is very, very, very true. So, okay, all right, good point. Do you ever see the diasporans coming back to Zimbabwe and contributing to the leadership? Because that's what we're saying, right? That if Zimbabwean leadership was open-minded, then they would allow the diasporans, because they've gone out there into the world and they've learned a couple of skills. Now they should be able to bring back that skill and be part and infuse it in our national psyche. Because if we do that, then we start developing. Do you ever see a situation or a scenario where that can happen? And are we welcoming?
I wish we had that, we are seeing much more of that happening. I would look at a scenario where, okay, it's fine when you are young, you think maybe let me go and conquer the world, right? You go, you do what you do, you progress very well professionally, and maybe at some point, I don't know, in terms of the cutoff age, you feel like, okay, I've done everything that I needed to do. I've seen and I've exposure in all the big metropolitan cities. Now it's time for me to go back to Zim and give Zim maybe my last 30 years or so. If we were to create an environment where the diasporas could see Zim even as a good retirement place, because when you're old, you need to be closer to your people, and you're slowing down. So even these trips to go to Murewa, to Chipinge, they tend to become more valuable to you, maybe at a certain age than they are right now. I think if we were to create that environment, we would have probably most of our diasporas towards retirement or early retirement age coming back. What would they want? Probably they know that they're coming here, the service delivery is not bad. So you are used to first world healthcare, right? And it is at that point where you really need it the most. So you want to know, to be certain that when I go back to Zimbabwe and I'm not feeling well or I need to access this, I'm able to do 1, 2, 3. And I've seen a few who have done that. Even as close as to, like on my road, a couple that came, I don't know, they're from the UK. You can actually see that these people, maybe they're chowing their pension money because, the house is redone, repainted. They're just enjoying their life in Zim, away from the house and bustle of a big city like London, right? Mm-hmm. But we need to provide an environment that...
So maybe so you're similarly saying... The Sabuku in Murewa or in Gutu, that is a good leader. The first thing that they should probably do is open themselves up and say, but my kids have been in the city. When they come here, there are certain, amenities, and there's a certain way in which they want.
The quality of life
must be.
It can't deteriorate.
What can I do? How can I
make
open
them
it
comfortable?
Up?
Yes, even to a point of
give them more land.
Exactly.
If you because they've got more capital, give more land. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then incorporate them and their lifestyles that they're used to already wherever they are.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a very good point, because I think what it does speak to is that at a national psyche, what we need to do with our organizations, even ZESA, is let's infuse our diasporans that are already in these very powerful positions, who are outside, whether in South Africa or in the UK or in the US. Let's have them sit on our local boards. Let's invite them as consultants. Let's invite them in our national, processes. Whenever we're designing, NDS2, let's have the diasporans play a big part and big role, because what they will do is they will give us these amenities that they would like to see. That would actually invite more investors in our local environment. Okay, so I think that's a very good point, and I think we should, take it up, because I think our big problem is actually leadership. But rather than say it's the leadership at national level, let's go back to Sabuku level and say, what are the issues that we're seeing at Sabuku levels? It's interestingly enough, those are the same issues that we're finding at national level.
Yeah, and a good community leader, it may be a Sabuku or a councillor. I've heard instances where some community leader would say, we have to come give you a piece of land because we know that you will develop, right? So it's actually important, even at national level, we know our people.
And to be proud of these people in the
we know our people.
Yeah.
Let's take stock of everyone. Let's keep in touch with them. You don't want to see in a situation, okay, it's not bad, but you can't have some of our most successful people being celebrated in other
jurisdictions.
Exactly. And then it then boils down to the issue that you mentioned at start, that you might have a situation where in a village, the leader just creates bad blood, or they're perpetuating a culture of bad blood, where even some of your successful people, instead of celebrating them, you are vilifying them, and you are, they don't feel comfortable. I think if you do that, obviously, the message you are sending even to the next generation is this society does not, the day you are successful, you have to get out of this place. And we are seeing a bit of that with...
And we're not celebrating.
We are seeing a bit of that with Zimbabweans, who are some of these more successful Zimbabweans would tell you that I want to have a home in South Africa. Some are even going into Lusaka, Zambia, because we're saying we are in this society where every hint of success is looked at with skepticism. You can't be doing that. You want your people to feel proud, and like when someone goes and build that huge mansion in Toko Mrewa, as per your example, it's really because they feel secure. Right? They feel secure, and they feel that if my community...
It's a source of pride.
Yeah, my community is celebrating it, and they'll be celebrating it. Do you think you can do it in an area where there's that risk that the Sabu can just...
Well, we celebrate our Tenderpreneurs, one could argue. Is there anything wrong?
That's a bad thing.
Why shouldn't we celebrate our Tenderpreneurs?
Yeah, well, look, it can be controversial. Let's celebrate proper entrepreneurs, people who have created something that you can stand before a group of kids in primary school or early stages of high school and inspire them. I created this. This is what I did.
So what do you think the problem is? Let's go back to Sabuku level. Why is Sabuku or those in leadership at village levels, are you saying that they're not celebrating the kids that are going to school and doing very well, and now they're celebrating the kids that are, bringing in the drugs and all sorts? What's wrong there?
I would say in communities where successful kids are celebrated, they tend to want to do more. So if you were celebrated at grade 7, you are inspired to do well in your at O level, at A level, because you are saying, this.
You're being acknowledged.
I'm being acknowledged, right? There is, the feedback is positive.
So the point that you're saying is
positive, right?
Sabuku must celebrate the right.
Yes,
meritocratic.
Exactly.
Because if it doesn't, if that is warped,
yes.
If you're celebrating the wrong things, then you're only encouraging the wrong activities.
The next generation, you're actually giving them wrong pointers in terms of things that they should value going forward, right? Look, it's normal in any society to have some bad actors, some people who think the entire livelihood can be supported by being a thief. For example, right? But when that happens, clearly you are a community leader. It has to be very clear to everyone that even if this thief has built a huge property, that's not celebrated, right? It still has to be frowned upon. And then there's this person who, I don't know, they're just fixing bicycles or they cobbler or whatever, and from there they manage to build a thriving business.
Okay.
You celebrate them.
And we can see how the wealth was. So if we look at America, for example, and when Forbes puts up their, 500 richest people or billionaires in the world, what it's doing is sending the right signal that these are the people in our society who've rose purely on a meritocracy. They've done phenomenally well, and this is what we're encouraging. So the kids who are in school, they can see it, and they can see that society is celebrating these meritocratic individuals, and they're not entrepreneurs. In fact, it's hard to think of an entrepreneur who's done phenomenally well in America. People tend to think that.
So look.
Whereas in Africa, the people who drive the fancy cars tend to be entrepreneurs. I think we need to move away from entrepreneurship and really focus on proper entrepreneurship, proper innovation, and celebrate it when it does happen.
Look, fine. So maybe we could say our society is broken like that, so you always have Tenderpreneurs, right? But to the extent that we are creating entrepreneurs, we need to celebrate them more. That's what.
Okay,
really
I get it. I get it. Yeah.
Because even I was given an example that when we were growing up, there were these people, the high flyers who were there, right? I don't know whether it's the Pamires and the Phillips and etc. But on the other side, they were creators.
Like Strive.
Yeah, like Strive. Even before you get to like a high level creator like Strive. I mean, the story of like Daniel Chingome, the guy who tried to build a helicopter.
Yeah.
It was an inspiring story.
True.
Yeah, it was an inspiring story of someone who thinks big, even if the vision that he had was probably bigger than what he could achieve.
But that we held it in esteem.
Exactly.
He's probably very good in our society.
Exactly.
So a Sabuku who sees mfana chifunga uti no tichadai is Sabuku who's celebrating that instead of the entrepreneurs is probably inculcating the right sort of values in that society.
So we had so many of these people, and during that time they're actually being celebrated, and so you'd find people wanting to be, I want to be this and that. And you see the stories even in arts and culture. You see the stories of Thomas Mafumo or even the Oliver Mtukudzi. They were not your fly-by-night kind of people who, they just wake up with whatever, getting donations, etc. They actually worked for it for like 15, 20, 30 years. And maybe like a Tuku, his big hit was probably some 20 years later, right? So, I mean, there's a lot.
Put in the work.
Yeah, there's a lot to be learned from
And then we celebrate that.
Yes.
Because what we're saying to everyone in that society is you have to put in the work.
You have to put in the work. You don't expect to get the result immediately. And don't give up. It doesn't have, don't look so much on time and say, no, I've been doing this for 15 years, 20 years, because maybe your big break is on year number 25.
That's very true because, in line with that, if you look at Amazon went for 16 years without making a profit. And it was okay because they live in a society that actually celebrates the innovation. It was more about the innovation than it was about profitability because people knew that eventually on the 17th year, we will start making a profit. And the capital markets actually reward people who are being innovative. Because a shortage of cash flow in international capital markets means that you actually know what you want to do with the money. You're being innovative. That's why you have a cash flow. And when you run out of, and I'm glad that Shumba is not here, otherwise he'll be apoplectic when I say this, that, a recent report came out that Apple has bought its own shares up to about $700 billion US. And you know what Steve Jobs would have said? They've run out of ideas. They give him money.
Yeah, because it's the case that they could. Yeah, it's the case that they could.
They've run out of ideas, and Amazon.
So they are not seeing value in R&D.
They're not seeing any value whatsoever, and that's why they're behind as far as AI is concerned, because they've run out of ideas, and. The argument I'm trying to make is that societies and capital markets that value innovation know the consequences of celebrating that it will be a long slog, 16 years without making a profit, but that's perfectly fine. We will still give you a high PE, we will still give you a high valuation because we're saying you're actually doing the right things that we need in society. So that's positive feedback to the business. So going back to the Sabuku, it's still the same argument, right? That what is Sabuku doing to ensure that his villagers are making long-term decisions rather than short-term gain? And I think that now we live in a Zimbabwean society where everything has to be a short-term gain, and it's not really a long-term. But I'm being told that the time is up. This went by very quickly. But I think we've solved, we should become an Sabuku.
Yeah, look, I think my closing remarks, I think we just need to go back to where we lost it, because we used to have this kind of values, these sort of values maybe in the 80s, 90s. And I think part of the deregulations and the liberalization that was done in the 90s, we really try and promote more entrepreneurship, right?
True.
And encourage more risk-taking. And we need to be able to send these messages that we want more entrepreneurs. And yes, some will fail. There's nothing wrong with that. It's part of, that is what capitalism, what happens in a capitalistic society.
And Sabuku actually says, okay, you didn't get it right. No, but that's
exactly.
okay.
You don't have to. So it's not a badge of shame to run a business, to fail in a business, right? Just keep encouraging them, because maybe for every 7 that fails, if you have got 3 that are successful, they are creating value.
That's actually phenomenal
for the economy. But in the process, you're actually teaching proper values to the kids. But right now, it's different to a point where, look, I don't know to what extent you are a soccer player or you follow local football. When you start seeing, in an environment where big brands like whether it's Highlanders or Caps United or Dimbare, they are failing, and there's a threat that the entire 50, 100 years of history, of culture, of a brand that we built over those years.
But are you a Dynamo supporter?
Of course I am.
On this particular...
Yeah.
Okay, that's the cue to stop this.
Yeah, so I can't, you know, like
to Dynamo supporters.
I don't want to see my team being relegated. But, you know,
it might be good for you. Meritocracy might actually be good for you, but
there's no meritocracy. It's anyway. I think you can close the show.
Yeah, let's close the show. You know, by the time we end the show, you're always particular. It happened again last week. You then try and be extremely controversial. So I will stop you.
Someone who still wanted to make my point on why I'd said.
No, we're not going to get into it. There's a reason why we stopped the show.
Thank you so much, because I'll get in trouble.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, it's always a pleasure. Today we just went down a rabbit hole. We haven't done this rabbit holes in a while, but I actually thoroughly enjoyed this. Let's hear your thoughts. What do you guys think? Village heads, is the mentality of village heads, is that what's affecting us at national leadership? And how do we get the diasporans to come in and to infuse them in the development of our local market? And how do we get the urbanites to go back into their rural areas and develop those rural areas? Otherwise, have yourself a wonderful evening. We certainly are. And enjoy your weekend. Cheers.
Cheers.